Now we're just on the road to our next event and just trying to celebrate here for a little bit. But I'm in the car with Gurmann here. I just want to ask him a couple questions about how he feels and whatnot, and just get a little different perspective than just my old Asian self. All right, so Gurmann, first off, how do you feel that you just finished your last exam ever?
It feels good in that aspect, in that regard, that we're done with our last exam. We're done with PT school, essentially.
Heck
But
yeah.
it's also bitter in the fact that I probably won't be in the same classroom as all of my classmates probably again. So yeah, it's great, but it's also like, man, like soak this moment in, because it's been a long time coming and now it's finally here.
Right.
So I would say bittersweet, relieved, and just kind of happy, satisfied. Is like the last word I would say about that.
Do you remember when you first came into class and you were like, oh my gosh, like freaking the first quiz of school? We studied so hard.
Dude.
Remember you came over and
we were up all night quizzing each other. Oh man. And now in speaking about that, now we had this exam, and probably like 30 minutes prior to the exam, we're like actually studying.
Right.
We're procrastinating and actually studying 30 minutes prior to our exam.
Right, exactly. So we
Just
just
like
finished our first quiz.
Just like
How do you feel, Parker?
How
do you feel like you've done?
Worst case scenario, I gotta
just
be.
like
I
the
calculated.
front, like me,
That's still
just like
passing.
the run.
She just came out.
Don't like the fuck.
Blessed.
Yo, girl, don't like the trust.
I feel so limp now. All my energy was for the quiz, and I was just like, ah! And now I'm done, and I'm like,
So if you can say to yourself, your past 3-year Gurmann self, from when you entered or when you were about to enter DPT school and where you're at now, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
I would say, of course, you're gonna study and you're gonna grind, but also know that you need some time just to breathe and relax. And so maybe spend time grinding, but also spend time with your classmates. Spend time like relaxing and doing things to kind of clear your mental side. So maybe not. How do you say it? Just don't emphasize the study, like I have to get this done, I have to do this, because you will. You
Right.
will grind, you will get it done, you will do what you need to do. But also just to clear your conscience and for your own mental health, like enjoy yourself a little bit. Relax, hang out with your friends, talk, goof around, have that a little more, and just know that you're gonna grind at the end of the day as well.
So you wouldn't like study as hard as you did, or do you feel like you studied way too much than necessary?
No, I feel like I studied what I needed, but I feel like it was like study non-stop sometimes, and it's
Right.
like I know I can study and I'm gonna get it down, but spend some time just, even if it's just by yourself, do something that's not school related.
Like I think you told me you would play basketball by yourself or something
Exactly,
like that, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, just go do that. Especially like, as we study, let's say you're going on a couple hours of studying, you're like, man, I don't feel like any of this is really getting to me anymore. That's your cue to like, okay, if I don't feel like it's getting here, I don't feel like I'm comprehending this material right now, let me go do something to clear my mind, to reset, to refresh, and then go back to it afterwards.
Some study tips right there, y'all. So if you can give like a ratio. Oh, here's Casa Colina.
Yeah.
By the way, you guys, Casa Colina, let me see if I can get that. Oh, there it is. So Casa Colina is a hospital that we would go to on our neuro rehab days, and we would see real life patients there. So patients with neurological disabilities, spinal cord injuries, some traumatic brain injuries, all those kinds of things. So it was really cool that APU's program would send us over here to work with these patients and work on a subjective, objective treatment, and really challenge us on like what kind of assessment would you choose for like your balance test. Like, is this patient appropriate for a Berg balance test or a Tinetti or a single leg balance? Like, which one is it? So it was really cool to get that experience and really see how a patient with like a flexor synergy pattern presents like, and how we would actually like go about that, or what that actually feels like, what the spasticity feel like, all that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, get into PT school, you'll figure out what I'm talking about. Anyway, back to Gurmann. So if you could give a ratio on like studying and not studying, what would you break that ratio up to?
I think that varies on the person. So yeah, I want to say it varies on the person, because some people comprehend the material a lot quicker than others. Other people need a lot more repetition. But if I could give just a general ratio, I would say, dang, that's tough. I would say maybe 3-to-1. So let's say you study hard for 3 hours, or 3-to-1, 2-to-1. You study hard for 3 hours, 2 hours. Give yourself 1 hour or maybe 30 minutes just to reset, you know, and then maybe go back into it.
Gotcha.
You think that's a good ratio? What do you think?
3-to-1. Yeah. I would say you definitely need rest, and it's definitely like you don't want to completely like not study. Yeah. So and you got to grind a lot. So I would say like 3-to-1 is a pretty good
it's
way.
It's a good ratio,
like,
but with that also know that what number is that? Our brain only comprehends like a certain amount of material. So right. I think it's like every 30 minutes or something you need a 15-minute break or something like that.
Right.
I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But maybe have that as your ratio possibly as well. Is like, hey, if I study hard for these next 30 minutes, then I need a quick 5-minute refresher or buffer and then go back into it. So yeah, that's where ratios could change. But
okay, I dig that. Now I just kind of, as we were talking here, I kind of got some more ideas, and I kind of figured maybe this video will go into some advice for some incoming DPT students and stuff like that, because I feel like you're giving really valuable information. Gurmann, by the way, those of you who don't know, Gurmann just recently accepted a job. His hometown is in Baco, and he got a phenomenal offer, and they are really looking into him to excel in the company, potentially be a one of the leaders who's going to run his own clinic, things like that. So this guy, he has phenomenal and very, very influential words. So take in what he's really saying, because I mean everything he's saying is super, super applicable. All right, so if you could give some advice on some studying tips going into DPT school, because obviously it's different from undergrad. What kind of studying tips would you give? If you can give some practical tips for some incoming students or students who are trying to study for their prereqs, what kinds of tips would you give?
That's a really good question. I would say one thing that I realize is you have to trust your brain. You have to trust that you know the material. So what I mean by that is, in undergrad, I would force myself to repeat and memorize. I had to repeat what the content until I felt like it was just in my head. Right. It's not leaving. Nowadays, it's like, no, if I go over it, I'm really trying to break it down and think about it and accept that, like, okay, I know this material. Right. So you don't have to repeat as many times, or you don't have to like go over the material as many times as you normally would. Right. So just trust that you're gonna get the material. So trust that your brain, have trust in your brain that you know the material.
How can you prove to yourself that, or trust yourself of what you know? That's
a good question. So I would, to speak in that regard, is what I would do is I go over the content and then I just keep going, you know? And then let's say it's been a couple hours, maybe the next day, I'll retest myself. So I'll go over that content, and if I know it, then it's like boom. Right. Versus like going over it, okay, I've gotten this page of lecture notes down. Right. Let me go over it again. Right. And let me go over it again. Right. I don't do that. Now it's just I go over this page of lecture notes, I get it down.
Give it a break a little bit.
Give it a break, and I just keep going on with the next lecture notes. Gotcha. And then maybe the next day, or maybe like later on in the day, I'll go over it again, and it's not that I'm reading the words, but now I'm teaching the words to myself. So it's like, gotcha, you know the material when you can teach it to yourself, and you can teach it to others. So
yeah, I've definitely heard that from other professors as well, saying if you can teach it, then that means you really know it.
Exactly.
Okay, and then what else? Like, give me one more, another tip that you would give students.
I think another one is something that we did is maybe prior to the exam or prior to this big practical and whatnot, is getting together with some of your colleagues.
For sure.
And just like diving into each person's brains.
Hey, what's the party around here? When it comes down to it, like, we all know like what structures are in the body. We just can't get too psyched out. It's stuff we know.
I feel pretty confident. I think it's all about fine-tuning your craft, so I think a little more practice.
a lot more time in the books and in the lab, and I think we'll get it done.
So what we do is we would go over all the content that we think is valuable, and we would kind of test each other.
Right.
You know, like we would set up practice exams or practice practicals,
Right.
and we would essentially just quiz each other. You know,
yeah,
and it's great because you get those different opinions as to why this makes sense to this person and why this makes sense to that other person. You know? So you can pick each other's brains, and it really helps. Like I remember going into exams, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Justin said this, and this is why. You know what? That's exactly true.
Right.
So.
I totally remember that. Like there'll be times where I would study something, and then like you or someone else would tell me that same information or a different way to say it, and it just stuck way better in my mind versus just like just me reading it. And then I think it also helped. That is super important as well, because when you go over stuff, you like miss some information, and you're like, I don't even remember that.
Exactly.
And then of course it shows up in the exam, or it shows up in the practical, and you're like, damn, bro, thanks for saving me on that one.
Exactly.
Like, I clearly remember so many times when that happened. Yeah. So
it's like you have your own brain, but after going through that study session with your colleagues, it's like now you have three different minds with you. You know, so it's very helpful, very like valuable.
Nice. Gurmann, where can people find you if they have any questions?
They can email me.
What's your email?
My email is gthind, THIND, 2018 @gmail.com.
Okay.
And they can look me up on Instagram as well.
What's your Instagram?
My Instagram is just my name, so it is GURMANN_THIND.
And those of you who are spelling that out, that's not Gurmann. It's, how do you say it?
It's Gurmann, but it's spelled like it's Gurmann.
But how do you really say it?
It's pronounced Gurmann.
No, it's not. It's pronounced Gurmann. 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 Gurmann is the man. GG, we here.
Peace out,
Peace.
Peace out, y'all.